Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the ValuesJam guest session series. And Peter, it's great to have you here. So to start with, please introduce yourself and tell everybody about the great work that you do.
Thank you, Alan. Pleasure to be here. My name is Peter, and I'm the co-founder of Beyond Trees, which is a charity focused on tree planting for improved collective well-being. And I am also what else can I say? I've been I know Alan for quite a long time now. I think it's been 3 years actually. We met through Beyond Trees, and just happy to be here and taking part in the ValuesJam.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Alan.
So let's. I've got the card deck here, and how many piles would you like me to make in front of me, Peter?
How many piles? Let's go for 3, just to keep it simple.
Yeah. Okay. And would you like the left, middle, or right pile?
Let's go for the right.
That's the smallest one, actually. So 12 cards, so a number between 1 and 12, please.
Let's go for 12.
12. Well,
it's a nice number. It's a nice number.
It's a lovely card.
Oh, there we go.
So what does beauty mean, and what does it look, feel, and sound like?
So this is the part where I answer, right?
Yeah.
What does beauty feel, look, and sound like?
Yeah, so there's the look, sound, and feel is kind of the metaphor bit, and you can start there if you prefer, or
Sure.
there's the what does it mean? So that's the more kind of logical answer.
Sure. It's hard not to make this a philosophical answer. To me, beauty is something that is generative, something that by its nature is somehow attracting our attention. We seem to be attracted to beauty, and what creates beauty it seems to be just a well organized. So the beauty is it opposes chaos, right? So it's organization, and by its structure, it's somehow it's generative. So it influences us positively. It allows us to somehow restructure. By looking at something beautiful, we somehow feel more beautiful and simpler, and so it helps us reorganize our own internal states, and hence the philosophical answer here.
No, it's fascinating because the thing that I'm picking up on, I think, of what you've just mentioned is the opposite of chaos. And what came to mind was I can't remember. I think it might be in Mexico somewhere. There's somewhere in the world that is famous for butterflies everywhere. I can't remember exactly where it is. I think it's South or Central America. But anyway, that's the image that came to mind, and it was in response to your use of the word chaos, because I imagined walking through all of these butterflies everywhere, but thinking, but that would be so beautiful. So I'm really curious about this relationship between beauty and chaos that you've touched on. So could you kind of just go into that a bit more?
Sure. I mean, whilst you were speaking, maybe you can have beauty within chaos. Maybe chaos isn't the right word. Maybe a lack of organization, lack of structure, or if something is in the wrong proportion, that's
Yeah.
we tend to not look at that as beautiful. So, but you're right. There's a lot of some of the best art and music is born out of chaos, you could say, right? It's you can have really run down neighborhoods that have beautiful pieces of art in them. So maybe chaos isn't the right word.
And actually, you just mentioned music there, and it made me think of probably jazz more than anything else, because it seems that with a piece of jazz music, it does go off into kind of chaos, but oftentimes it kind of comes back to some sense of organization, and there's this counterbalance between the two where you go off in one direction and you're really not sure where you are, and then you hear maybe the riff that you heard at the beginning of the track, and all of a sudden it comes back. So that's another example of where actually, rather than organization and disorganization being opposites, they can actually happen at the same time or within the same framework. And also the other thing now, if we've just touched on music, I'm thinking that beauty, I think when we first started to talk about it, you were focused on visual, but now we've mentioned music. Then there's a beautiful taste, a beautiful sense of touch. So it really, I wonder if most people seem to think about beauty from a visual perspective first, or that's my sense. But it does apply to our other senses as well, right?
Sure. Whilst you're thinking, perhaps it's, so we have how many senses? 6? I don't know. Core senses there. And perhaps it's not right to say that beauty is the opposite of chaos or opposite of disorder, but instead, beauty is, like, we call something beautiful as a result of the way it influences us through one of our senses. And if it's somehow a positive solicitation, and maybe if it's more objective, so if it's not just me that feels positive about this certain thing, but actually multiple of people, and perhaps this thing is commonly known to solicit positive things more objectively as opposed to subjectively, then perhaps then it can be called beautiful.
Yeah, so you're going down the route of consensus is a justification of the use of the word. If everybody says that it's, creates a positive sense of appreciation, then it can be called.
Unless you're saying that beauty can be subjective. So somebody can, I can find something beautiful, and somebody else can disagree with that, then that's also fine. But I think this definition stands as like, if something influences me positively, then perhaps I may say that it is beautiful in my subjective sense.
And there's a saying, isn't there? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So
perfect. That's a perfect.
Pardon?
That's a perfect analogy. Yeah.
And also this thing around order as well. I'm thinking of my mum now. So my mum had a mole on the side of her face, but I have a photograph of her, and I know there's it's a bit subjective because it was my mum, but she has or had a beautiful face, even though there was this imperfection on her face. So I'm thinking about how is it that something, a dark spot on your face, which is clearly different or not in keeping with this sense of perfection and beauty, and yet it is beautiful, sometimes just because it is different. So what's that about?
I don't know. I guess maybe we have a tendency to we easily get used to things, right? So if something is different, it makes you look at this thing with a new eye, like a newborn baby. You haven't seen something before, something's new, so you see it in with this novel as a novel thing, and perhaps then we're more able to conceptualize it as something beautiful, because it's like living in a place where you may live next to some amazing facilities, sports facilities, and how often is that we live next to something so close and then we never use those resources. We often tend to fantasize about a holiday elsewhere because we're so used to the places that we frequently visit that we don't recognize them for what they are. So maybe if something like the mole on the face, it's something new. So perhaps it makes you look at this with new eyes and reevaluate. Perhaps maybe that's why it's soliciting this kind of. Perhaps it's why we tend to look at these things as interesting and beautiful.
Mm. And do you think?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Do you think that so this question about or this point about getting used to things, and again, I'm just reminded now. I attended an event at a hotel in Scotland, and it's on the shores of Lake Loch Lomond, and I was being driven to the airport, and the guy driving the car said, "I'm the luckiest man in the world because this is the drive I have to and from work every single day along this beautiful loch." But he certainly still appreciated it. Whereas, like you say, sometimes it's easy to maybe have that drive twice a day and not really see the beauty that is all around you because you're so used to it. It becomes the wallpaper, if you like, doesn't it? So I wonder what makes that difference between somebody like him who noticed it every day versus, like you were saying about wanting to go somewhere else because you don't appreciate your own surroundings. So what makes that difference?
Our philosophy, I suppose, like how we live in the present moment, or do we, it's easy for the brain to erase, or we don't focus on the things that are everyday things because it's using, like, it's our way of saving energy, right? But if I try to become more of an explorer in my life and have a gratitude for every day that I'm alive, then I think that helps to see the everyday as with these novel eyes, see every day as a unique event in my life, as opposed to something that is every day, like like you mentioned, a wallpaper. So I think it comes to like the way we approach life and in general. We can essentially, going back to like as we were kids, when we were kids, everything was new, everything was exciting. Why do we lose the magic of Christmas?
Yeah.
So going back to like trying to find, essentially going like trying to be a kid once again. I think that's the approach that could help us people view each day as a and see like the lake which we spoke about, see it with new eyes every day and see its beauty.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thought, actually. And I have 3 grandchildren now. So Jacob is 4, and I took him to in London there's a natural history museum where they have dinosaur skeletons and stuff like that, which he really is into. But what you've reminded me of is we were walking inside the building, and I just said to him, Jacob, what do you think is around the next corner? And he was like wide-eyed, and I don't know, but shall we have a look? Whereas when you're in your grown-up mindset, it's just a corner to be navigated, right? You don't have that sense of excitement at all, or sometimes. And it is very changing, because if you look at your environment from that let's label it kid perspective, it's so much more fun. So okay, and what about the metaphor part of the question then, Peter? So when you think of the word beauty, what image comes to mind, what sound comes to mind, and what feelings come to mind?
What sound comes to mind? Maybe like a beautiful piano music to me. It's quite subjective, but I think objectively people find piano music quite beautiful, or can find piano music quite beautiful. What does it look like? Maybe like a beautiful painting of a woman, since I'm a man, or it could be a beautiful land, like a scenery. Yeah, like a sunset and like a nice. You're on the hill and you're looking down. What was the other question? What does it feel like? What does it feel like? Maybe like it feels like a really nice hot oil massage. And what was the other question? Does it smell like?
You did that.
Sound. Yeah, I did that. Yeah. Okay. Then that's the
yeah. I mean,
what does it look, sound, and feel like to you?
So I'll follow you with the piece of art, but I'm thinking about a sculpture and actually, so I went to Cyprus recently, and we went to Ayia Napa just to have a look, and there's a sculpture park there, which is incredible. All these beautiful, mostly white stone sculptures, which when you're looking up at them against the backdrop of the beautiful blue sky is just incredible. And there was one of 2 mermaids sitting on a concrete block, just facing forward. Another of 2 birds like herons together, and just beautiful curves. So I'm thinking of sculpture with curves being a really important part of it. That's the visual one. The sound, I'm fascinated by this because I enjoy music, but actually I don't think I enjoy music that I would describe as beautiful. So there's a band that I like out of New Zealand called Fat Freddy's Drop, and it's kind of jazz funk, but it's not, I wouldn't describe it as beautiful, although it's great. I love it. And I agree with you about some style of piano could be described as beautiful. And And what when I was on holiday recently, there was a guy, and he had I think it's called a C drum. It might not be a C drum. Anyway, it's basically um, small pebbles contained within this circular case, and you tilt it so that everything shifts and you can hear it. It sounds like the sea. Um, I'll have to look that up and see if it's the right term. And it's such a beautiful sound. And this guy was just stood there maneuvering this instrument, and you could hear the sound of the sea.
Mm-hmm.
So that and maybe a harp, I think, is
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. So that's weird, isn't it? That how we can describe something that we really enjoy, but it isn't beautiful. Don't quite understand that actually.
Mm. Well, it can solicit the emotion of excitement, for instance, but is that necessarily, I guess beauty is more connected with peace and harmony.
Yeah,
So to me personally, at least. So I think a harp is, it's an instrument of the gods. So I think it's an interesting
yeah.
choice there. I was just thinking whilst you were speaking, have you ever did you ever have you ever had a big shell, like a seashell, and you put it by your ear and you can see the sound of the ocean?
Yeah.
That's kind of fascinating and beautiful in itself, I think, too.
I mean, I think what you've hit on something there, that there is something about beauty being um, peaceful and harmony. You use what that word as well, gentle, all of those things rather than the exciting, attractive, which is somewhat different.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
you can have, music that solicits anger, or you can have music that really solicits the ego of like, yeah, look at me, I'm the top of the world, that I don't think that's beautiful. Um, it's something else. It's something else.
mm. So let's go to the opposite side of the coin that we've just started to explore. And where have you noticed a lack of beauty?
Um, well, it's quite easy. It's quite easy to say the war, perhaps, since there's two going on at this particular point in time. Um, but I think for me, and this goes back to perhaps the intention behind setting up Beyond Trees, is that as a kid, I think I was 6 at the time. I remember this particular it's interesting because it's not a particular event that I remember, but I remember a particular emotion or a sense, or it's a emotional memory of perhaps walking, and it's connected to perhaps walking down certain streets and really feeling that, oh, this place is not beautiful, it's marginalized, it's not really loved. And I could see how the impact that had on me, perhaps not being so open and the perception of the world, of myself and the world around us changes when we are in a place that is beautiful as opposed to a place that is not so beautiful. So I think, and that's the intention behind training at Beyond Trees, is to we want to plant trees in our local neighborhoods because of the beautifying effect that they have. So I think the lack of beauty, you can see beauty everywhere, and you can see perhaps the lack of beauty also. There isn't like a single place where I see lack of beauty. I think it's a spectrum, right? It goes from complete abundance, places perhaps which are being completely marginalized and abandoned, run down, to places which have like West London, which is beautiful. It's got beautiful trees and beautiful neighborhoods. And sorry, I think I'm blabbing on a little bit. Not really, but I think you can make up for what I'm trying to say here. You can maybe help me explain what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, well, while you've been talking, I'm thinking about how sometimes, and this it was from the context of a neighborhood, right, or a district, and how is it that we allow really ugly buildings to be put into neighborhoods where they kind of clearly don't fit? And there's something going on in my head around the big picture versus the small project. So it's, why is this single building not thought of in the context of its surroundings when decisions are being made about whether it can be built or not? So actually, I mentioned Cyprus. We were just driving along, and off to the right, there was this monstrous tower block on its own, just in the middle of lower rise buildings. And it just was completely out of place. And yet, I guess somebody else might say, actually, I find that building to be beautiful. So this comes back to your subjective point right at the beginning of the conversation.
Mm. I think for me, what I was trying to say is, there's an interesting study, and I don't know the name of the study, but it's out there. Done basically, there was some rundown neighborhood in the US, and the crime rate was quite high, and there was a lot of smashed glass everywhere. So the buildings had smashed glass, the bus stations, whatever. There was a lot of smashed things. And so the project, what they did is they went in there and they've replaced the paints of smashed paints with new glass. And in no time, the glass was smashed again, and as it was previously. But the project continued. They changed the glass again and again and again. And after a medium term, the glass, the people stopped breaking the glass.
Okay.
And actually the crime in the entire neighborhood has dropped as a result. Seems to be connected to this idea of replacing the glass. So I think there's beauty in that. And perhaps what makes beauty is you have to reaffirm beauty. Otherwise, it's very easy for it to degenerate. So it is certainly a value, because values, you have to uphold values for them to work. And I think it's really easy to see where there's beauty and where perhaps it has to be brought back practically.
So in that situation, what you're saying is that the lack of beauty, and whether that's ugliness or whether it's chaos, maybe it was a bit of both, influence people's behavior and their perspective. So, and then by dealing with the visual aspect of the environment, it had a positive impact on other things as well. Where was that? Was it in America? Did you say?
There was some neighborhood in the US, yeah. I forget which one. Yeah, but it could be anywhere, it's do we feel like the place that we live in is appreciated? Do we feel like it's beautiful? And I, I would argue if it's yes, then we would have a lesser tendency to want to commit crime or other offenses.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And there's
would
also,
argue, I would argue this, but then you could say that, well, if you live in Venice, there's still crime in Venice. But I think that comes back to your previous point of, do you recognize the beauty, or is it an everyday thing for you? And so you become sort of numb to it, like this conversation that we just had with the lake. So it's not alone to have beauty, but you must see it too. And I think with the smashed glass, it's obvious because now all of a sudden the environment has changed, so it is new, so it's easy to see it. But if something is already beautiful and I'm so used to it, then perhaps it's easy to not recognize it for what it is, and perhaps that's why there's still crime.
you're also making me. I'm thinking about litter, which
Oh,
is
yeah,
sad. I'm sad to say it really irritates me, and I start to think of myself as one of these kind of old people that go bang on about something like this, but it really makes me angry actually when you're in a beautiful park or place and people have left empty bottles or whatever it is around because it's so disrespectful of other people. And the reason it came to mind was because once it's allowed, it then is self-perpetuating and everybody kind of joins in, thinks we don't have to bother. Um, and what is it about that? Because is it because one empty bottle or barbecue or cellophane wrapper or whatever it is it because that has spoiled the beauty on its own, and therefore there's nothing to protect anymore, so that's why other people feel that they can just leave it because it's no longer beautiful in the first place? That's not really, doesn't make sense to be thinking like that, but is that part of it?
good question.
And it's it's so simple to take it with you. That's the thing.
Sure. And it's like, it's also very simple to pick it up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, and that's what I'm planning to do in where I live. Currently, there's maybe some litter around the streets, and I'm just telling my girlfriend, look, I'm just gonna get a bag and I'm gonna get one of those clipper thingies,
yeah.
and I'm just gonna go around and pick up the litter. Um, and it's like, yeah, it's so simple to affirm, reaffirm the duty. It's also simple. It's also easy to mechanically see the litter and think of it as an excuse for my own leaving of litter in the place. And I think this is where, like, you can think, well, even if there was this excuse, why would you do it? Why would you leave litter? And it comes from ignorance, perhaps. It comes from maybe recommendation. Maybe I'm not feeling happy about my own life, and so I want to, the external world is a mirror of our internal world, so people say. So, if I'm not feeling great with myself, then if I leave some litter around, it makes me somehow on feel better. It's like me saying, I don't know if I can swear in this interview, but like
Yeah,
f off to the world, I'm gonna litter. And I think it comes from perhaps not a healthy place. And we have a choice to either um give ourselves up to these kind of emotions, or try to affirm values and live with values.
So in ValuesJam, you know that there's the opportunity for us to create our own question. So I'm going to invite you to ask your own question about beauty. So beginning with who, what, where, when, why, or how, what question do you have for us?
Why is beauty important for you personally?
Ooh. I think there's something to do with a relationship with enjoyment, which is one of my core values. And so I really enjoy looking at something that's aesthetically pleasing, listening to a beautiful piece of music, enjoying a beautiful meal or a glass of wine. Although enjoyment, my definition of it is kind of maybe different than you might expect, because it's to remember how lucky I am to be doing whatever I'm doing. That's my definition of enjoyment. So, if I'm washing the dishes or weeding the garden, I enjoy it, when instead of thinking of it as a chore, because it touches back to what you were talking about the guy along the lake, I think. It's this positive appreciation of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just read in the on my phone this morning, one of the characters from Cheers has died, and so we might not be here tomorrow, so you might as well enjoy today, all of it. So for me, that is not only why beauty is important, but why everything is important. What about you?
What I'm hearing in your response is that you need appreciation for the beauty to bring enjoyment. So it's like a mathematical equation. Beauty plus appreciation equals enjoyment.
Yeah, well, actually, so can beauty exist without appreciation?
And can appreciation exist without beauty? I think it can. I think you can appreciate, like we spoke earlier, you really like a piece of music, you wouldn't call it beautiful,
Yeah,
but you appreciate it. So I think it definitely can. But beauty also, I think, can exist without appreciation, but it doesn't. Without appreciation, it doesn't penetrate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like, okay, it's beautiful, but I don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to this memory of the lake.
What's your answer? What's your answer to your own question?
I smiled when you started speaking, because I also connect beauty to enjoyment.
Okay.
Right. So if very, very much so, it's exactly what you said there. If my time here is fixed, then I might as well just surround it with beautiful things, beautiful people, beautiful characters, of course. I mean, not necessarily aesthetically beautiful, but also beautiful people would be nice. Just beautiful things. Because it does with a hint of appreciation, you can really it does bring enjoyment, right?
Now
So
you,
I think what we can train ourselves to do is see the beauty in the most see the beauty in everything, because in a way there's beauty everywhere, so we just need to train our eye to spot it, which I think is connected to appreciation. So if we're able to do that, then if that's the beauty and appreciation, if that's linked to enjoyment, then we can enjoy life very much just by seeing beauty everywhere.
Yeah. And you've reminded me of lockdown. And I remember, we'd not been allowed out, and then we were allowed out, and we went for a walk. And two things specifically I remember. One was hearing a robin singing, and I just stopped and listened to the bird singing, and I've heard that so many times before, probably, but I'd never really listened to it like I did at that moment. And then I also remember it was a sunny day and the light was shining strongly through a green leaf, and you could see the veins. And then there was a shoot just behind it as well. So that was creating a shadow on the leaf. And I just remember looking at it and thinking, wow, that looks amazing. And the different shades of green and the light and all the rest of it. And again, previously, I think I probably just would have walked past that. So it is this big difference between when you're tuned in and paying attention versus when, the guy along the lake, if he was just going to work and not seeing everything around. So that's the first thing. And then there is one other thing I want to mention as well, because when you were talking about a beautiful person, and then you said not necessarily what they look like, there's a almost hidden dimension of beauty I want to touch on. And the way that I'll describe it is this. When I moved into this house, there were two very large dead trees in the back garden. So to make the garden better, I had them removed, but I didn't want them to be just disposed of. So I found a guy who works with wood, and he wanted to have them to make stuff with. So I thought it would be really neat to have a table made for the loft room here, because there was this connection between you could actually have a table in your loft made from what had previously been in the back garden. And there's something beautiful about that for me. And I collected it this week, actually, and it is beautiful physically, but actually it's that extra dimension of it used to be in the garden and now it's in the loft that adds something extra beautiful to it. But I can't describe what that dimension of beauty is. So what can you have a think about that?
I think it comes back to what we said at the beginning, that it's something beautiful is very much connected with how it impacts you. What emotions does it solicit in you?
Yeah.
Does it solicit harmony? Right, was one of the words used.
Yeah.
And for you, this table has another dimension because of this additional. So like, it's almost as though beauty, yes, it exists in the external world, but also internally within each one of us. And it feels good if it's inside.
Yeah. So maybe beauty is something about this activation of harmony or harmonic emotions. Something about that. Because here's another one. The last book that I had was the foreword was written by a guy called Philip Kotler, who he's regarded as the guy that invented modern marketing, right? So very famous guy. And by chance, I was at a conference. So I'll try and keep the story short. Basically, I was introduced to him, and I told him that when I was at university, it was his textbook that we had to use for our marketing module. And then he ended up writing the foreword to this book that I co-authored with my son. And my son said, isn't it, I think he didn't say beautiful, I think he probably said, isn't it cool that you read his book when you were at university, and now he's read our book and written the foreword to it. And there's something, again, beautiful about that closing of the circle, or the synchronicity and the opposite of chaos that you were referring to as beauty at the beginning of the conversation. So something about that orderliness and coming together is perhaps that additional dimension of beauty that I was touching on there.
Sounds like a perfect closing.
Yeah, okay. So let's close with the question. What are you encouraged to do differently as a result of our conversation today about beauty?
I'm certainly more encouraged to end up buying that bag and that forky thing and go pick up some litter around where I live. That's for sure. You know, and I think for sure we can continue making our external world more beautiful. So like we're planning to do with Beyond Trees, to plant trees to beautify the external world, which have been proven to reduce stress and bring more harmony in our life. So solicit this internal feeling of beauty as well as it externally looking beautiful. But I'm also, as a result of this conversation, I think more inclined to think of beauty differently, and also think about, am I conducting myself in a beautiful way to solicit that in other people? So it's not just what I do, but am I being beautiful or behaving in a beautiful way to solicit that in other people? If it is connected to enjoyment, then I will feel better. I will enjoy myself more, but maybe other people will enjoy me more too.
Yeah.
And that's not a selfish thing. That's more like a gift for them.
I think that's a great answer on those different levels. Mine, I've got two as well. So one is, I'm going to look up that instrument that I talked about earlier, and I'll send you the link so that you can have a listen to it and hear how beautiful it sounds. The other one is, we're going to go for a run today, but rather than focus on how much I want to stop running, I'm going to focus more on my surroundings and taking that in, because I'm aware that I haven't been taking it in, because I've been kind of consumed with see if you can make it to the distance that you're supposed to do. So maybe that will help, actually. So I'll be interested to see how that works. So thank you very much, Peter, for this Values Jam. As always, a conversation with you is really thought-provoking and really enjoyable. So thank you.
Thank you for the questions.
Cheers.